Welcome back, everyone, to the Game or Die podcast. I am your host, Ryan Moore, as always, and this is episode 67. It's been a while, and that's only because, obviously, my work is, the schedule's crazy, and I have been traveling back and forth across the country and just dealing with a lot of work stuff. So gaming has kind of taken a side seat to normal everyday life, but that's not what we're here for. We're here for video game talk. And boy, oh boy, in the moments that I've had free over the last month or and a half or so, I have played a lot of different video games that I have not really either been into or I've come back to after kind of putting them down for a while. And man, I'm just having a really fun time with video games. So let's just kind of dive right into the actual games that I've been playing. The first one that I started playing that I was really excited about was the Resident Evil 4 remake. And that's because Resident Evil 4 is touted as one of the biggest and best games of all time. It is on top 10 list for a lot of people. I personally don't get it. I don't understand it. I think it's a very good game, and I'm talking about just straight up the original right now. I think Resident Evil 4 is a pretty good game, but I would never put it in my top 10, top 25, top 50, top 300 games of all time. I just don't get the Resident Evil games, or not that I don't get them. It's more that I am just not really big into zombies. And with Resident Evil 4, everyone goes, oh, they're not zombies anymore. Yes, they are, basically, right? They're mind-controlled zombies that have this weird bug thing that's injected into them. The fact that this is what I really have a problem with. And this stems from the remake as well, because you can kind of see it better because of the fidelity of the graphics. But you're shooting these people in the face. Like, you are Leon Kennedy. You go to this village to save the president's daughter, which, hey, that's a great video game plot. Like, right there, it feels very 80s action movie oriented, which I really like. I think those more kind of a little bit more fantastical type of plots for video games and movies are really fun. I really enjoy those. However, when you go to this remote European Spanish village and they're all walking around and shuffling around, they can't really, they talk, but they only have a couple phrases that they say. They're basically mind controlled and they're shuffling around like zombies. You shoot them in the head. If they were quote unquote still people, they would die instantly, period. Gunshot to the head will kill someone. But because they're quote unquote not zombies, they don't die. And that's what a zombie does. So that's kind of one of my biggest issues with the game. When people talk about it, they say, oh, they're not zombies. Yes, technically they are. So, and that really doesn't have a real, pull on the actual game itself. It's a Resident Evil game. It's going to be about quote unquote zombies, right? So let's kind of dive into the way that I've been playing Resident Evil games. So even from the very first game on PlayStation 1, I originally bought it from it was a rental video music store called Warehouse by my house when I was very young, when that game came out. I remember perusing the PlayStation aisle and going, ooh, Resident Evil, that looks cool. And I think it was $20. It might have been I don't think it was a greatest hits at that point, but it was the re-release where they actually allowed you to use the DualShock PlayStation controller. So it had DualShock controls, and it's like a little sticker blurb on the front of the CD case saying, now with DualShock controls. And so I went, oh, that's cool. I have a DualShock controller. I want to try it out. And zombie game looks kind of cool. So I remember buying it, taking it home, playing like 5 minutes of it, and going, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. And it mostly stemmed from the controls. I hated the tank controls and the static camera. And so I took it over to my friend's house and he played it. And man, he loved that game and that series. He fell in love with that series. So it was really interesting to see him really latch onto it and me like really pull away from it going, I can't get behind the controls. I can't get behind the static camera element. The zombie stuff I don't like because I'm a big scaredy cat when it comes to that type of stuff. I don't like being scared. That's why I don't like watching horror movies most of the time, is because I don't like being scared. So over the years, when every one of these Resident Evil games comes out, I kind of just disregard them. But a few years ago, back in 2019, they did the Resident Evil 2 remake, which was, again, one of those games that everyone talks about as being one of their favorite games of all time. And as a connoisseur of video games, as video games being my main hobby, I want to be able to try and experience every game that, someone says is really good. So that's what I tried doing. And with the Resident Evil 2 remake, it was very vastly different than the remakes that Capcom always puts out. Capcom has been shilling out Resident 2 remakes or Resident Evil remakes for a very long time. They started on the GameCube when they did, I believe it was Resident Evil 0, I believe is a remake of the first game. That was on the GameCube. That was like 20 years ago. So I have always been very hesitant of Resident Evil games, but because Resident 2 was a 2019 remake where it was very, very different than the Resident Evil 0 and all that other stuff and all those other remakes, where they just HDify them. It's basically the same game, but with HD graphics. I at least gave it a shot. And I talked about it on the original podcast, I believe, as well, when I first started this back in 2019, because man, I really, really enjoyed Resident Evil 2 Remake. It was very scary, very atmospheric, and I was terrified, and I played it like an idiot at like 2 o'clock in the morning in the mountains by myself, alone. But that's kind of the way you play these games. It takes on such a different tone just by the atmosphere of the area of what you're playing it in. Like if I opened up the blinds and I played it on a Sunday afternoon, it wouldn't have the same impact. And I get that. And as much as I hate being scared, as much as I hate those creepy moments and things like that, that's the way it's designed. So you gotta immerse yourself a little bit and release yourself to the experience of playing those games in the proper setting. You just can't experience it the way it's intended to on a sunny Sunday afternoon when the sky is clear and, the birds are singing and, it's a bright, sunny, no clouds in the sky type of day. You're just not going to get the same impact, the same experience. So I did leave myself open to being jump scared and things like that and being freaked out while playing that game. And I enjoyed myself. I really enjoyed the Resident 2 Evil remake. Or Resident Evil 2 remake, sorry. But that was like the tip of the iceberg, right? Because now they've been releasing these remakes of the Resident Evil original games on a fairly constant basis. They started with Resident Evil 2. Then back in 2021, I believe, they did Resident Evil, or maybe even 2020. I think it was 2020. Resident Evil 3. And that remake I bought sight unseen because I enjoyed the Resident Evil 2 remake so much. I really enjoyed it. So I was like, of course I'm going to play through 3. I have no idea what 3 is even about because, again, I'm not a big Resident Evil fan. So the only thing that I know about Resident Evil 3 going into that remake was Nemesis, because it was such a big part of gaming when that game came out. Everyone was talking about Nemesis and how cool it was that he followed you and all this stuff. So, and he stalked you throughout the game. So I was really excited about that because they did really good with the Resident Evil 2 remake and Mr. X. Mr. X stalks you around part of the police department. You hear his clomping footsteps everywhere. It's insane. And then all the mods, obviously, and the memes that came out of that Resident Evil 2 remake, Mr. X stuff, where they would like overlay DMX's X gonna give it to you and stuff like that. Like, I personally hate memes. I think they're dumb and stupid, and 99.9% of the time they're worthless. But there are an occasional few where I laugh and I go, okay, that's actually a pretty good use of whatever they're doing. And so that mod and like some of the other ones where they even would allow Mr. X to go into safe rooms so you would never actually be safe. I think that's actually really cool. It gives another dimension to the gameplay. So Resident Evil 3 remake came out in 2020. I played through that in one sitting and I was extremely disappointed. I blew $60 on that game, and it's like a 5-hour game, maybe 5 or 6 hours. I think I blew through it in way quicker than that too, because after about an hour and a half or so, I think I wasn't having any fun with the game. I just was like, this is very bland. It doesn't feel very interesting. I think the voice acting and the dialogue was just really bad to me. Again, this was a few years ago. I played so many other games. I can't remember exactly why I disliked it, but I did dislike it enough to just kind of play through it and then forget it ever existed, and just always be really pissed off that I paid $60 for that experience. So kind of fast tracking to Resident Evil 4 remake that just came out. I was excited for it. And the reason why is because, like I said, it's everyone's favorite Resident Evil game. It's most people's, not just favorite Resident Evil game, but some of people's top video game of all time. And I've never played through it. I've attempted to play through it multiple times. The first time I can remember was in 2014, I believe. I was on furlough from my company, and so I actually had a lot of time off, and I was really big into gaming, and there was a Steam sale. And this is back when Steam sales were still really, really good, where you would get, top tier games that just came out for 75% off. Now it's like a top tier game and they're giving you 15% off max. But you could walk away, you could drop $100 and walk away with at least 30 really amazing games. Now that's not the case. So it was back in the time when Steam sales were awesome. And I bought Resident Evil 4 because it was like $3 or something. It was like $2.99. And I was like, I might as well. I like building up my Steam library, and I'll play a PC version of a older game because you can at least up the resolution and stuff like that. So I bought it and I gave it the old college try. I was like, you know what? I'm going to really try and play this game. When I remember loading it up back then, the controls were reversed with the aiming. It wasn't inverted because I was still actually playing as an inverted person back then. So like when you push up on the joystick, the character's reticle moves downward. And when you push down, it moves upward. I know a lot of people hate inverted, but that's how I played for so many years. And a quick side note, I actually was able to reverse my inverse joystick configuration by a game called the Fidelio Incident. I think that's what it's called, the Fidelio Incident. Came out in like 2017. I was just married. I moved, we were playing a game together, and there was no control option for reversing or doing inverted control scheme. So I just had to play that game. And it was a very walking simulator type of game. And it seemed really cool. So I was like, I bought this for like 17, 20 bucks. I'm going to play it. I'll just deal with the control. And because I was forced to play regular style controls, when I went back to another game and tried to inverse the control scheme and do inverted controls, I couldn't play that way anymore. It totally rewired my brain after playing like 5 hours of that game or whatever it was. I think it's a walking simulator, so it's a pretty short game. I think it was like maybe 3, 4, 5 hours, something like that. And it just rewired my brain so I could never do inverted controls anymore. So I really, really liked that. And when I played Resident Evil 4, it was kind of the same thing. The control scheme, I think it was inverting the X axis, not the Y axis, where the Y is up and down, X is left and right. Horizontal axes. So that was something that really threw me off. But I tried to play a little bit of it. And when I was playing that, I played like an hour or so, then I stopped, and then I went online and I saw the Steam comment saying, "Oh, the HD, some modders are making an HD version." And so I started looking into that, and it was still in its infancy. It was like, "Oh, we've got half of the game done in HD." So you could load up some of it, but it was like, "Oh, we only got like until chapter 5 or 6 done." So I was like, well, I'm not going to load up a mod that's half done and play through half of the game in HD and then revert back to normal. So I was just like, I'll just wait. I'll just wait for it. No big deal. And then it was really crazy because that HD, I said, I'll wait for the HD mod to get finished because I want to play, because I only play games one time all the way through. Very rarely do I ever go back to a game. So if I'm going to play a game like Resident Evil 4, I'm going to play it in the best possible version available. On PC, with an HD mod, with good controls. So I just said, I'll wait. And I waited, and I waited, and over the years, I kept checking back for that mod to be finally updated. And I think back in 2021, when Capcom announced that they were releasing a Resident Evil 4 port for VR, I was like, wonder what happened to that special HD mod. I went and looked it up, and they're like, oh, we're almost done. So it was like 6 years, 7 years later, they were almost done with the mod. So I said, I'm just going to wait for the VR version. And so the VR version finally came out. I bought it on Oculus Quest, and I started playing through that. And as I was playing through that, the HD mod for Resident Evil 4 on PC actually finally got finalized. And I was like, too late, guys, man. You took way too long. Like, I know this is passion projects and stuff like that, but when you make a mod like that, like, at least do the work so that it gets completed in a certain time frame, like an HD mod. And look what happened. It's a little bit of a different thing because they have removed some stuff with a remake, but they remade the entire game. But Capcom themselves remade it. That's going to be probably the premier version, the better version of what to play. So I started playing through the VR version of Resident Evil 4. And that was at a time where my in-laws were coming over. It was starting to become the holidays, and life just got off the rails. And I had to put it down, and I never picked it back up again. And I was just like, this is another time that I'm playing through this game where I get sidetracked and I just kind of don't want to go back. Like, it's a fine game, but I wasn't like, it didn't have its hooks in me. It didn't grab me the way that I wanted it or thought it would, to the point where I just kind of was like, I had enough. I could put it down and play something else. I'd rather play something else. So This last month, Capcom finally released the Resident Evil 4 remake. So this is the third version of the game that I'm attempting to play through. The original PC version with the HD mod that never came out until just now. The VR version a couple years ago on Oculus Quest that I played partly through and then put it down and never picked it back up again. And now the remake. So this is my third real, again, college try type of attempt to play through this game that everyone says is amazing. And I started it up and I was like, okay, cool. This is pretty good. I actually did even some streaming of it a couple of times and I was having a good time. I was being very cautious in the beginning because it's a Resident Evil game. It's zombies. It's scary. And then I started watching other people play, parts that I already played through, like the beginning. I downloaded the demo too. The demo came out a couple weeks, I think like a week before the game actually got released. And so I was like, I'm not sure if I want to buy this, but I'll play the demo to see what it's like. And I actually thought the demo was really cool. But again, it was very scary to me. The atmosphere is really serious and drenched in just like terror and horror because it's a survival horror game. And so I was playing very cautiously over the first couple of hours. But when I started watching other people play the game, people were blowing through it because it's their favorite game of all time and it's top 10 and all this stuff. So they don't take it as seriously. And I saw a lot of people saying that Resident Evil 4 is a camp game. It is a comedy game. It is not supposed to be taken seriously. And they really dislike the Resident Evil 4 remake version because it doesn't have that comedy element. And I've watched people play through the Resident Evil 4 game, or partially through. I've watched people play through Resident Evil as a whole. I've played through Resident Evil 2 and 3. Nothing about that game is a comedy. I don't understand what people really are talking about when they say Resident Evil 4 is camp. No, it's not. I can guarantee you that the developers are making a survival horror game because that's the genre of game it is. It's not survival comedy. It is not a joke game. When you have things like when the characters say, oh, I thought it was a Jill sandwich or whatever, all the crappy memes and stuff like that. Back when those games were released in mid 90s, dude, that was not a joke thing. It was not a meme. It was just bad writing. And it's not bad writing for the sake of being bad writing. It is general writing that is just bad. That is different than camp. And I don't understand why people don't understand the true meaning of words. Camp is basically exaggerating something, an element that is intentionally serious to a comedic effect. But that is not what Resident Evil 4 is. Resident Evil 4 can have comedic elements. They can have levity so that when you have an ultra dour serious moment, you have comic relief so that you are not just completely exhausted and weighted down by the experience and the storytelling. Those have existed for, millennia in stories. Comedic relief is absolutely something that happens in these games, but it is not intentionally camp. Now, like I said, I have not played through all of the Resident Evil games. I've only played through 2 and 3, the remakes. I've played a couple of the other ones, but I've never finished them. But nothing about playing the original Resident Evil 4 back when it was released on GameCube or the PS2 version or any of the other versions. Nothing about playing through those games tell me it's camp. Like, oh, this is a lighthearted comedy action romp. Like, no, it's a survival horror game where people are running around with chainsaws and they're zombies and, You have people, cultists, like doing sacrificial, killing of children and stuff like that. That's not comedic. I'm sorry. You don't understand what the words mean. So that's my little rant on Resident Evil 4 and the people who are playing through these games and laughing through them, because that's not the intention of the developer. The developer is making a survival horror game with sometimes a little bit of comic relief. Comic relief and camp are two very different things. Anyways, so I started playing through this game. I was really invested in playing through it slow. And then I started watching people play it, and I went, man, this is more of, and everyone's playing it like an action game, which is part of the intent of that game. It is supposed to be, moved at a quicker pace because you don't have shuffling zombies. You have these zombie-like people who are running at you and things like that. So the pace of the game is much more action-based. So I started playing it like an action shooter, and I found myself having a much better and more enjoyable time with it. However, because of my scheduling, because of my job, because of everything that's been going on in my life lately, I just did not have the time to devote to playing through it all the way in a couple sittings like I wanted to. I thought I was going to be done with that game in like 3 or 4 days, week tops. But I would play like an hour or two of it, and then I wouldn't get back to it for a few days. And then I would go to California for a week, and then I'd come back, and then I wouldn't know what to do. And so I started it up, and then it was having issues and crashed and blah, blah, blah. And I think I'll never play Resident Evil 4. I just feel like I'm not supposed to play Resident Evil 4 because every freaking time that I try and play that game, I get sidetracked to the point where I can't play it. I'm forcibly not able to play it by some reason. So I want to like it, and I am playing it with, I bought the game. I bought it with the deluxe version that has different skins available for the characters. So like Leon has his classic bomber jacket. You can have him wearing like a army fatigues t-shirt and a bulletproof vest and stuff like that as one of the character skins. You also have him as they call it the Leon romantic skin. So he's got like a really frivolly, fluffy, frilly shirt, like the pirate shirt in Seinfeld. And he's got like purple leather pants, and he's got his hair like coiffed in a very like weird looking way. And I also gave him sunglasses, so he looks goofy. And for me, that actually really does amp up the comedic effect to it so that it adds levity to the gameplay. It adds a little bit of unseriousness to it so that I am not scared when I'm playing it at 2 o'clock in the morning in pitch black dark, with headphones on during a lightning storm. I can still enjoy myself and not be freaked out about it. So that's the way that I've been playing that game. However, I don't have the time. And there's so many other games coming out right now. This is the problem that I said we would have this year during last year when literally nothing came out last year. Everything got delayed to 2023, and now we're in 2023. We're in just about the middle portion of the year, and holy crap, there's too many big, gigantic games coming out. It's kind of exhausting. So Resident Evil 4, if it came out 6 months ago, man, it would have been one of my top 10 of the year because it would have been top 1 practically because nothing else really came out last year. But this year, I don't even know if I'll finish one of the quote-unquote greatest games of all time, remakes, one of the best remakes of a best game of all time, because there's too many games coming out now. And sure, it's a fun game, but man, I'm not having that much fun to where I am just wanting to spend every moment with the game. It's fine, but I just, uh, it- I mean, everyone has their different tastes and stuff like that, and my tastes are just not Resident Evil. But I did enjoy the first two, or at least Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 3 Remake was a different story, like we talked about. But I think Resident Evil 4 Remake is a fantastic remake. It's a good game, but at this point, I just don't have the time. Maybe I'll get back to it, maybe I won't. Who knows? But I want to talk about other games I've been playing. So, the Discord that I run is called Couch Money Games. You can go to couchmoney.org and there's a Discord link in there. And we do a game of the month every month. And the game of the month for April is Diablo. And man, I really have never played this game either. These games, I'm not a Blizzard person at all. I don't like most of their games. I never played World of Warcraft. I never played Warcraft. I never played Diablo, but I do remember when Diablo came out, my friend David, man, in like fifth grade, my friend David really was into that game, and he invited me over to his house, and like we would do like sleepovers and stuff like that. And he would show me like the games that he was playing, and he was playing Diablo with his brother, I think it was. And so like we sat at the computer together and I watched him play a little bit of Diablo. It might have been Diablo 2. I can't remember. I don't know when Diablo 2 came out, but I was pretty young. I was in elementary school when Diablo 1 was out for sure. And I remember watching him play it and going, oh, that's kind of cool. But I did not like the whole mouse clicking stuff. And so that is why I never really gravitated toward Diablo, is because I think that control scheme is one of the dumbest control schemes of all time, along with tank controls. Like tank controls, I kind of get for the time, but the clicking over your screen, and I want to go over here, so you just have to keep clicking and tapping and tapping and tapping and tapping and tapping and tapping and tapping, 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 just to go left. Like, why can't I just hold left on the keyboard or A on the keyboard with the new gaming control scheme that everyone uses? Like, I just never understood it. So I had a real hard time ever really even caring about Diablo. But when Diablo 3 came out, I think that was in 2011, somewhere around there, I remember just the fervor around that game. The amount of people losing their complete minds over that game. So I gave it, again, the old college try. I bought it a few years later when it was on sale. And I was like, I'm going to try Diablo 3. I think even I was talking to my wife about it when we were dating. And she was like, oh, Diablo, my brothers play that. And so I started playing it. And I went, I don't really like this. I think I got maybe half an hour in. That's all the Diablo I've played in my entire life up until this month. So because Diablo was the game of the month, I went through and I was like, okay, I'll play Diablo 1. And it was on goodoldgames.com or GOG, and it was like $8. I'm like, dude, I'll spend $8 for this classic PC game that I've never played before. So I downloaded it and I played it, and I had a really good time. I did all the I streamed it too, which was really fun. I got a couple new viewers, which was really cool. I had some good conversations. I've had a couple people from the Discord actually watch my stream and give me updates and give me tips while I was playing, which really, really helped out too. So thank you for those of you who actually helped me out on the streams, because again, I'm going in blind to these games. So I played Diablo 1 and I just had a blast with it. Going down into the dungeons and everything like that, it was really interesting. The graphics were a little bit hard to get used to because they are so pixelated. They're so hard to actually see some sort of fidelity. And I did get a tip saying, oh, you can just press Z to zoom in, because I was like, dude, this is pulled out like really far. Like I need a little bit of zoom in. However, I think the zoom is too zoomed in. Like, you are big on the screen and you only have a little bit of area where you can see around your character. With that type of game, you need to be very conscious or cautious and understanding of where you are in the game world and where your enemies are in relation to your character. So I didn't really use the zoom option too much because it was just kind of not useful. It was zoomed in too much. But I had a blast playing it. And so once I finished Diablo 1, I immediately went to Diablo 2. And it was really cool because Diablo 2 was on sale at that time because they're doing the Diablo 4 beta test because Diablo 4 is going to be released in a few months. So they put Diablo 2 and Diablo 3 on sale. And Diablo 2 came out with a HD remake just like 2 years ago. And I did look at it before I started playing Diablo 1 because I was like, okay, I want to see if I can just buy all the Diablos in a single pack. Well, Diablo 1 is, for whatever reason, not on Blizzard's storefront, which their app is called BlizzNet, I think, or BattleNet. That's what it is. It's on BattleNet. Because Blizzard Activision, which is hopefully at this point going to be bought by Microsoft so we can just stop the dumb naming scheme and kind of clear some stuff out and get this Activision Blizzard thing just a little bit better, because I'll dive a little bit into this because it's just a little bit confusing to me. So Blizzard is a huge gaming company, but they only put out a couple products. Same thing with Activision. Activision used to be huge, and they used to have a lot of different companies, games, franchises, IPs, whatever you want to call it. They used to produce a ton. Now they just produce like Call of Duty, and that's about it, right? So with BattleNet, which is their storefront, they sell their games, but they sell like 5 games. I looked at BattleNet and I said, all right, what does your store offer? World of Warcraft, Overwatch, and Call of Duty, and the weird one, Crash Bandicoot 4. And that's it. That's the only games that they have available to buy on their storefront. That's it. That's like walking into a store like Walmart and saying, we've got 4 games. We got 4 items that we're going to sell you. We have all this space. We're a gigantic multi-billion-dollar company, and we've got 4 or 5 games to sell you. And I was just like, what is this? Super weird. And so I went to the Diablo section. Oh, they have Diablo as well. Right. They had the Diablo section, and I was like, okay, where's the Diablo pack? And they're like, all right, here's our Diablo pack. Diablo 2, Remastered, and Diablo 3. I was like, where's Diablo 1? So again, I had to go buy it on a different storefront. So Good Old Games has Diablo 1, but they don't have Diablo 2. BattleNet has Diablo 2, but not Diablo 1. Like, what? It just doesn't make sense, man. I was just so confused. So I bought Diablo 1 on GOG. I bought Diablo 2 on BattleNet. And when I originally played Diablo 3, I had to buy it. I couldn't pirate it because it was one of those games that just did not allow you to pirate it at the time when I was playing it. I already owned that game, so I had that in my library. It's like, oh, here's your game library of BattleNet, Diablo 3. You played 30 minutes of it. But with Diablo 2, they have the regular version and the HD remaster. So, luckily, I was able to buy the Diablo 2 remaster in sale form. So, like, there was a big sale. It was like 67 or like almost 75% off or something like that. So I bought it for like 15-ish bucks, $17, I think, somewhere around there. And I was super happy because the night before I finished Diablo, or I was about to finish Diablo 1, and I was like, I'm going to finish this, but I have a little bit of free time. So I'm going to look at Diablo 2 and buy that and preload it so that when I finish Diablo 1, I could go right into Diablo 2. It was full price. It was $60. And I was debating. I was like, do I want to play Diablo 2 for $60? Like, that's a lot of money right now. Um, so I was debating it. And then the next day, someone was like, oh, Blizzard's having their sale. Diablo 2 remastered is $17. And I was like, bought, done. Under $20, that's a guarantee sale for me for the sequel, an HD remake of a game, a sequel to a game that I really was enjoying. So once I finished Diablo 1, I bought Diablo 2 on a sale. I got it for cheap. I was super excited. I installed it and I started playing and streaming it. And I had a lot of fun with that too. The HD remake is beautiful compared to the original version. I really like how this HD remake has I think it's G for graphics, but you tap a button basically to change it back to the old school graphics, the original graphics and the HD graphics. You can go back and forth, kind of like the Halo Master Chief collections games, or the anniversary collections, where you can switch back and forth between the different graphical styles. The Adventure or the Secret of Monkey Island games, I think those were the first ones, those remakes that came out in like 2009, 2010. Those were the first remakes that I remember where they used the original game engine and updated it so that you can swap back and forth between the two different graphic styles. And I think that is like every HD remake version should do that. Every single one, period. Like, you just should be able to do that. I understand with Resident Evil 4 because they changed a lot of stuff, but again, how rad would it be if they actually did Resident Evil 4 remake where you can tap a button and it goes back into the original graphics so you can see how terrible it actually looks. But I started playing Diablo 2. I had a couple streams that I did. And again, I was getting some new viewers, which was really cool. I was having some really good conversations with some new people watching. So if you're listening to this podcast and you are one of the new viewers, thank you very much for continuing to watch and also listen to the podcast. I hope you're enjoying it. But man, it was so cool to be able to get tips from this game that people love and adore and know backwards and forwards without having them backseat game, right? You never want to play a game and just have someone yelling in your ear, do this, do that, do this, which honestly doesn't really happen all that much. And if it does, you can ignore those types of people because I'm playing the game that I want to play it the way I want to play it. But man, it's been a lot of fun. I'm streaming a lot more now, but I'm only streaming when I have the time. And that's, again, the big factor. Playing Diablo 2, I was streaming it, and then I had to cut it off in the middle of playing and fly out to California and do a bunch of work. And I've been gone for a week. And so I came back and immediately jumped into another online class where I'm in front of a camera for 8 hours, talking for 8 hours, and I'm just exhausted. So I can't really have the energy to stream after I've been doing it for a full day's work. So that is where I'm at with Diablo 2. I've played I think maybe 6 or 8 hours of it, somewhere around there. I'm having a good time, but it's just like, oh, I gotta get back to that. And do I want to stream or do I want to play on my own and all that stuff? But man, the Diablo 2 remake, it is just phenomenal. So that's what I've been playing over the last couple of weeks here. Now we're going to kind of switch gears into what I've been playing as my backlog games. Now, I'm switching up the format just a tiny bit here. Yeah, we'll stick to the format. I'll talk about the backlog in a second because this the way that I want to kind of restructure this podcast is first talk about what I've been playing currently, and then what I am looking forward to for the new releases and things like that. And then at the very end, talk about the games that I have on my backlog, the ones that I'm kind of randomly playing through. And everything has been so jumbled together over the last month or so that I'm kind of currently playing everything at the same time. And what I am looking forward to literally came out just a few hours ago. So it's kind of a little bit of weird of a situation, but I needed to get podcasting done today because it's the only moment of free time that I actually have. So, what am I looking forward to? Well, there's one game on the horizon. Like I said, it just came out a few hours ago, late last night, early this morning, which is Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which is the sequel to Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Fallen Order was a game that came out in, I believe, 2019, and holy crap, I had a really good time with it. I have been so disenfranchised with Star Wars. I am so fed up with Star Wars over the last several years because of the Disneyfication of it, the oversaturation of it. Remember when we were going to have 3 Star Wars movies a year, and they were all like going to be side stories? So like origin stories, Star Wars Origins Boba Fett, Star Wars Origins Darth Vader, Star Wars Origins Obi-Wan, Star Wars Origins Jabba the Hutt, Star Wars Origins, C-3PO. Like, it was just like, dude, there is way too much. And so when they stopped doing that, it was like a little bit of a breath of fresh air for me, especially because so many people have latched onto the pop culture version of Star Wars that it just got exhausting. It's almost May, and guess what, quote unquote, fake holiday is coming up? May the 4th. Oh my gosh, I was so sick of that when that started up several years ago. Everyone was celebrating Star Wars on May 4th, and it was just like, dude, this is not a real holiday. And they're buying merchandise and all this stuff, and it's like, man, you guys are idiots if you don't see this. These companies are exploiting your nostalgia so that they can make a quick buck off of you, and you're gladly, happily doing it, and you're even giving them free PR. Like, I was so pissed off about it. And so when the newer Star Wars trilogy came out, it was like, this is not very good. And then they were just over-exploiting the movies, and they stopped for a little bit. And then we got things like The Mandalorian Season 1, and it was just like, whoa, this is a breath of fresh air, because it's a Star Wars game or TV show that takes the content seriously. It removed a lot of the jokey, campy stuff and things like that, made it a more serious, more mature version of Star Wars that we all kind of really latched onto. Same thing with Fallen Order. Fallen Order felt like a very mature, serious type of Star Wars product that people my age could go, all right, cool. I don't have to deal with a bunch of, silly, stupid crap. I don't have to deal with Jar Jar Binks type comedy in this game. It felt like a breath of fresh air. And it was also a very Dark Souls style game. And that's a genre at this point, Dark Souls. So it was a Dark Souls game. And I was like, man, I hate Dark Souls, but I'm actually enjoying this type of game with the Star Wars, theming around it. But it's like baby's first, Dark Souls. And I really enjoyed it. I had a fun time with it. I had a blast playing through it, being a Jedi that's you're not really familiar with, seeing the storyline of his character. Cal Kestis is the character, the new droids, the new characters that you interact with. The semi-open world nature of it was really cool too. So I really enjoyed it, man. I had a blast with it. So when they announced Survivor, which is the sequel, was coming out this year, I was like, oh, great, another 2023 game that hopefully I'll have time for. And it came out last night, and it was supposed to come out a couple months ago. Again, a couple months ago would have been perfect timing. There's so many games right now that are on my backlog now that I just don't know what to do with. But this is a game that I've actually been really looking forward to. Because I played through Elden Ring last year, I have a much better understanding of the Dark Souls genre. So coming back to baby's first Dark Souls, the sequel to that first Fallen Order game, I think I'm going to do a much, much better time with. I'm going to have easier time. I'm going to have a better understanding of all the different parrying attacks and things like that. I think I'm going to enjoy this game a lot more than the one that I previously did with the Fallen Order. And I really enjoyed that too. So I'm excited. Like, I'm just straight up excited for this game. It was supposed to come out a couple months ago, and I feel like I would have had a great time with it. But I wasn't really sure when I was going to get around to this game. And luckily, my schedule, I'm off today. So I had all night last night, and I have all day today to play this game that just came out last night. So I was like, do I want to spend $70? Because video games are $70 now because inflation and recession. So I'm going back to pirating a lot of crap because I can't afford all these games that are all coming out at the same time. And boy, these games don't deserve my money. And I'll get into that in a second. I'll go off on a little bit more of a rant here. But basically, I was debating on whether or not I wanted to pay $70 for this game or not. And I came to the conclusion, like I did a few years ago with the original Fallen Order. No, I don't want to pay $70 for this game. $60 for Fallen Order back in 2019. So the reason why is because this game is on EA Origin. EA Play, whatever they're calling their service now, because they keep going through name changes. Now, I could either spend $70 and own this game, or I can spend $15 and rent this game, basically, for an entire month. Which one do you think I went with, right? Of course I went with the $15 one. Like I said, I don't replay games often anyways. I'm trying to be a little bit more smarter with my money because, dude, we're in a terrible recession and inflation is skyrocketing every single day. Eggs cost $7 for a dozen. Like, screw that noise. So I have just been trying to be a little bit more cautious. So what I did is I opted for renting the game off of EA Play, having a subscription to EA Play for an entire month for $15. And I not only get to play Star Wars Jedi Survivor, but I have the full backlog of EA, which has another game that I wanted to play back in December, which was the Need for Speed Underground or Unbound or whatever it's called, the new Need for Speed game that came out a few months ago. I wanted to play that, but I didn't want to spend $60 on a game that I might only play a few hours of because the Need for Speed games have been really bad the last several years. The last one that I played was Heat, and that was in 2019. I did a podcast on that game, and I really enjoyed it for the most part. And so I wanted to play that game. Now I have complete access to both that game and the new Survivor game. Like, dude, for $15? Yeah, of course. So I loaded it up last night. I downloaded and installed it. I started it up at 11 o'clock which it unlocked for me. And I started playing it. I noticed two things. Boy, this runs like garbage. And boy, this looks like garbage. And I was really struggling to figure out what the heck was going on. I was getting really bad stuttering and frame rates. And I'm playing on a PC, which my current PC that I game on is considered probably medium high end, like high low end probably. I can't remember what processor I have, but it's one of the ones. I think it was in 2021. I built that computer, and so it's a 2021 processor, i7, hyper-threaded, and all that fun stuff. 64 gigs of RAM and a 3070 Ti GPU. Now, 3070 Ti is nothing to scoff at, but it is a couple years old at this point. And that's because A, inflation and recession, B, the last couple of years ruined PC gaming for everyone because of crypto. So it took me almost 2 years to get that GPU, and I had to pay over the MSRP at that point. And it should run most of my games absolutely perfectly. I'm not running in 4K because my projector doesn't do 4K right now because the one that did broke, and the one projector that broke did 4K and also 120 hertz. 120 hertz at 1080p, 4K 60 though. But that projector broke, so I had to switch it out for just a normal 1080p 60 projector, which is fine. It's not a big deal. I'd much rather have a 16.5 foot screen than a 60 foot or 60 inch TV. So a big gigantic projector is what I like playing on. So doing 1080p is not that big of a deal for me. That card should run that game absolutely flawlessly, and it runs it at. Okay, so I just did the actual frame counting and all that stuff. I did the NVIDIA overlay, and I got the FPS and all that stuff because I don't really pay attention to that stuff anymore. But I can notice frame drops if they're massive, if they're really bad. But if it fluctuates between 55 and 60 frames, or 120 to 115 frames or something, that's not that big of a deal to me. But if it's fluctuating between 30 frames and 18 frames, which is what I'm getting in that game, oh boy, I'm not going to play that game. And so I played about an hour and a half of the game. I probably got an hour into the actual gameplay. The other half hour was just switching out settings, trying to figure out what the heck is going on with this game. My graphics card should be absolutely able to be playing 1080p 60 frames per second on that game. The game itself has a ton of issues. It's under-optimized. It has frame pacing issues. It's got a ton of issues that people are just losing their minds about on the internet. So I made the current decision to just not play that game anymore until it gets a little bit patched, because yes, my graphics card is outdated at this point technically for, really good gaming. But for regular gaming, it should absolutely have no problem playing that game at 1080p, 60 frames per second. And it can't, so I'm just going to wait until it gets fixed. It's a bummer because I have that subscription for EA, just sitting there now, and I'm kind of bummed, but whatever. It's $15. I can't really cry over spilled milk, right? And that's about as much as milk costs nowadays, so whatever. Okay. Let's take a little bit of a break here so that we can just regroup a little bit. I'll play some music, have some fun listening to that. And when I come back, I'll talk about my backlog. So I actually might retitle this because backlog is a little bit weird now. Not for the fact that it's a bad word or anything like that, but I don't think it's actually very descriptive of my life in gaming and how I play games and stuff like that. A backlog is, it has a negative connotation to it. I actually like to refer it to as my library of games, mostly because that's exactly what it is. It's a gigantic collection and library of games that I can pick up and play at any point. Now, do I do that? Sometimes, but most of the time when I pick up a game, I want to play all the way through it. I don't want to put it down in the middle and then, come back to it years later or anything like that. If I'm playing a game, I'm starting from the beginning, I'm ending it, and then I'm moving on. So I have this gigantic library of games that I can pick and choose from. And there's some times where I get a little over ambitious and I buy games that I don't need to, or I want to play it on a better platform. And because I've been traveling a lot this last couple of years, I bought a Steam Deck. And I have it in California so that when I get done with work, I can actually relax and play video games. But because of the way my work is and because how stressful it is and how much I hate traveling and how stressed out I am with traveling, I don't want to play games. So it kind of sits unused a little bit. But I do pick it up every once in a while. One game that I bought after I played through it, which I very rarely ever do, but it does happen, is a game called Vampire Survivor. It was one of my games from last year. That was one of my favorite games from last year because it was just so easy to pick up and play and just have a good time, which is what most video games should be. So I picked up, I played it, and just had a really good time with it. And I started playing this, and I got through it on Game Pass last year. It was on Game Pass. It's a $5 game, but it's technically free if I already subscribed to Game Pass, which I already did. So I just picked it up, played through it. I dropped 17 hours into that game because most of the levels are 30 minutes long. So you can play a level 30 minutes and you've dropped half an hour into that game without really even thinking about it. And you want to complete levels and replay levels with different characters and different objectives. And so you just continually are dumping hours into this game, which I, again, dumped about 17 hours into. Now, that game got so popular that it also is on Steam, and they started doing DLC for it. And once they started doing DLC, I said, I'm not buying DLC on Game Pass. I'm not buying DLC for a game that I don't own. And since the game is so cheap, I'll just buy it on Steam. And because it's on sale for like 50 cents, I think $1 maybe, because that was like, 15 or 30%, whatever it is, almost half off. They also bundled the DLC with it, and the DLC was on sale and all this stuff. So I just decided, screw it. I'm just going to buy Vampire Survivor again on Steam with the DLC. And they've released 2 DLC for it. And unfortunately, the Game Pass and the Steam version save games are not compatible. So I would have to replay the entire game over again. Because I had so much fun and because I was traveling and because I could just dump half an hour into that game, I totally could do that. So I started doing that, and I just dumped a bunch more hours into that game. And I've had a really, really good time playing Vampire Survivor again. I have dumped, let's see here, 20 hours into the new Steam version of Vampire Survivor, in addition to the original 17 hours I did on Game Pass. It's a good game because I very rarely ever do that with most games. So I've been having a blast. And I'm starting to get to the point where I've kind of completed the main objectives for the game, but there's hidden objectives and all this hidden items that you have to find and all that stuff. So I've done the upgrades. Like, you basically earn coins throughout your gameplay, and you spend those coins to unlock characters or unlock additional power-ups for your characters and stuff like that. So I've been doing that. I talked all about this game, on previous podcasts last year, but just to kind of recap, that's how it works with the upgrade path. And then your characters have much better chance of surviving the 30-minute time limit, and then you can go past that and all that. So I've been playing a lot of Vampire Survivor on the road, which is really, really fun. The other game that I do want to talk about before we kind of finalize this podcast is, so a few days ago, last Friday, so this is about a week ago, I came back from California and I was just exhausted, just straight up tired. When I was browsing through Steam going, do I want to play anything? I came to a new Steam sale that was going on for the SnowRunner series. And again, if you've listened to this podcast before, you know I love the SnowRunner series. And it was really helpful because when that game came out in 2020, I really liked what I saw and played of it. I downloaded it first because I wanted to try it, but I was not going to spend $60 on it, and it was Epic Game Store only. So I was like, I'm not going to spend $60 on Epic Game Store because who knows if that was actually going to pan out, which it totally did, and I have no problem with Epic Game Store at this point. But back in 2020, it was still a very unknown type of store where we did not know if it was going to stick around or not. So I didn't want to spend the money on it. And I downloaded it and I played a couple hours of it and I went, ooh, this is really, really fun. This is really enjoyable. So I made the decision to buy the game because it started getting on sale at that point. And I was like, ooh, okay, it's like 20% off. I could buy it for 40 instead of 60, I think it was. So I bought it and I had a really good time with it. And I put, 15 hours into that game. I was struggling with it because you're getting stuck in the mud so much and all this fun stuff. So fast track to last year, 2022, and Couch Money decided that Mud Runner was going to be our game of the month for, I think, May of last year or something like that, maybe even June. And I did some streams of me playing it because I was like, dude, I own Mud Runner. Or no, I think I bought it on Steam because it was on super sale for like $5 with all the DLC, which there's like 7 different DLCs and all that stuff for $5. So I bought it and I played through it and I had a really, really good time. And I had a better understanding of how that game is actually played. You're supposed to move, use differential locks and upgrade the engine and all this stuff. Like all the stuff that goes into that game, I actually finally learned how to do. And so this last week, on last Friday, when I was coming home, I was just like, oh man, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? How do I want to spend my weekend? And I saw the Steam sale of SnowRunner with all the DLC for, I think it was $16. $17. Oh no, it was $17 for the base game. With all the DLC, it was $60. And they're currently still releasing DLC. And so I debated for the evening, do I spend the money on this game? Do I buy it again because I already own it on Epic and it would be a really stupid decision to just buy the game again so that I can say that I have it on Steam? Or do I want to spend $60 so that I can buy it on Steam with all the DLC? I decided on buying the full game and the DLC for $60 on Steam when I already own the base game on Epic. And the reason being is because, again, that's where I want to have my DLC stored. I don't want it on Epic anymore, or still. So that is just one of those weird idiosyncrasies of me where I just make kind of probably not the correct or best decision, but it's not that big of a deal. It's just $60, like, again, I'm an adult. I can make my own decisions. I can have some fun. And I justified it by saying, I will definitely get $60 worth of fun out of this darn game. And that's exactly what I did. I restarted the game because I could transfer my game save over, but dude, I played that game, back in 2020. So I don't want to, pick up where I left off. So I restarted the game on Steam, and I've been playing it pretty much all week during the free time that I have had. And I've dropped another 22 hours into that game. I have been nonstop playing this game, and it's been a blast. I have had some of the most relaxing gameplay over the last week with this game that I ever have had in my entire life. I've been so relaxed. Now, if you know SnowRunner, basically you're driving off-road, hauling cargo from point A to point B, doing different objectives, unlocking watchtowers, getting upgrades by driving off the beaten path. It's not a relaxing game from the outset, but once you learn how to play it, and once you kind of figure out your path of play, and I have the SnowRunner subreddit up on my phone a lot, just kind of seeing what they're talking about throughout the game. And I saw someone say, I just picked the game up on sale this week. I've never played it before. How do I play this game? I feel like I'm not making any progress. And everyone was basically really cool and saying, play the way you want. This is a very open game. And everyone was really helpful of saying, this is how the way that I play, but if you don't like that, do something different. And it kind of just made me feel better about the way that I've been playing, which is going to a map, driving to the watchtower that, blocks out the map, and unlocking the watchtower so that I can see more of the map. Then doing the next watchtower and then the next one so that I unlock the full map and show all the different objectives and car upgrades, because those upgrades are absolutely necessary. And then once I do that, then I can go and get those upgrades. Once I get those upgrades, then I can start completing actual objectives. The first objectives I start with is opening up different paths. Some roads are closed down, a bridge gets washed away in a storm or an earthquake. A tunnel going to a different map of that region, it gets broken so that you have to haul cargo to fix it. Like, that is the game. And that's where I start doing that stuff. And once I have my fill of the main objectives, clearing the roads, getting the upgrades, doing the watchtowers in that reverse order, right? Watchtowers, upgrades, roads, and paths. Then doing a few objectives that seem really interesting, like hauling a car out if I'm going to get that car as a reward for doing the objective, then I do that. And once I have my fill, I move on to the next region. And there is 12 regions right now in that game because of the DLC. And what's rad, I just found this out 2 nights ago, is that with that DLC that I purchased, one of the regions is Tennessee. And I went, dude, okay, come on. That's awesome. Because you've got like Michigan, Alaska, Russia, you got all these crazy, big, crazy things. And then you got my state, Tennessee. You don't see Tennessee in video games very often. So I jumped at the chance to load it up really quick, and I played around with it just a few minutes. And I went, oh, this is cool. I like this. But I'm going to do a normal progression path where I play through the region. I unlock all the watchtowers. I unlock all the upgrades for that region. I find any hidden cars so that I can add them to my collection to use. Then I repair any of the roads that need to be repaired. Then do a few objectives for that region and that map, and then move on to the next one. So it's going to take me a while to get to Tennessee. But this is a game that I can finally think I found my quote-unquote comfort food game, which I actually don't like that phrase, and I think I'm going to stop saying that phrase. I'm going to call it my relaxing game, my time killer game, my I want to find another phrase for saying it, but it's the one that I can come back to. I don't have any games like that. That's not the way I play games normally. But when I see people online and I talk to people and they go, "Oh yeah, I'm replaying this," or like even my wife, her go back to game is Mass Effect. She's played through Mass Effect more times than I can count. That's her go back to game. She loves doing that. Same thing with Animal Crossing. She's been playing that. She's come back to it recently and she's still on, her island that she started back in 2020. I think we even did a podcast episode all about that where I had her on as a guest and she talked about Animal Crossing. Because she loves those games. And so that was really, really fun. I think that's like episode 20 or 25. The Mass Effect episode with her is episode 10 for sure. I know that for a fact. But if you want to go listen to those, go listen to those. It is just a really interesting concept for me because I don't have any games like that where I go back to. I think I finally found my go back to game. So SnowRunner is my go back to game as of this point. I'm having a blast. I'm going to go play a little bit more of it once I'm done recording this thing. And just, it is so fun. It's so enjoyable. And I am playing with a couple mods. I'm playing with a mod called the Doomsday Car, which I originally played last year when I kind of started playing SnowRunner after I beat MudRunner, because I wanted to try out the mods, and I found this car that just barrels through everything. I used it to kind of complete the objectives that I originally completed on my Epic Game Store game save so that I can kind of reacquaint myself with the game, but also blast through the tutorial stuff. But now I have a mod for the Hummer. So I have two Hummers. Because I actually have a Hummer in real life, and it's kind of a bummer situation right now, but I'll talk about that in a second. The mods that I'm using two mods. I have an H1 Hummer, like the original big fat Arnold Schwarzenegger Hummer. And I also have a mod for the H2 Hummer because the H2 is actually in the game. The H1 original Arnold Schwarzenegger Hummer is not in the game. So someone added it to the game via mod, so I use that. Also, the H2 is in the game, just normally. You can buy the game right now, and you can find and drive an H2 in it. It is the truck version of the H2, which is a little bit weird because I've never seen that in real life, and I don't like them. I think I actually saw one on the road a few days ago and pointed it out to Elizabeth, and I said, I don't like the look of that. They have it in the game, and I don't like it. But I have an actual H2 Hummer, and unfortunately, that thing has it's been a real lemon of a car. It's had issues in its entire driving life, and I own it now, and the fuel line has been eaten away, and so has the electronic wiring been eaten away by vermin over the course of the last year. So I haven't driven it for a year, and it's a bummer because I drove it back and forth across the country a few times back in 2020, and I had a really good time. It was exhausting. It was one of the most exhausting times in my life, but it was also really interesting. But we have it out here, and unfortunately, it's in the shop right now, currently trying to see if we can even salvage it. And so it's a little bit of a bummer. So I'm having a little bit of an emotional time playing the H2 in the game because I'm just like, oh, this is my car, and I can't drive my car in real life, so I have to drive it in a video game. But the H2 in the game, not super powerful right out of the get-go. And even when you fully upgrade it, there's a mod to make it a little bit more powerful, to make it a little bit more enjoyable to play through the game. So that's the mod that I have. I have an H1 mod and modding the H2 in-game so that it's just a little bit more powerful. Not crazy overpowerful where I'm flying across the screen, but just enough so that I can use it as my main scout vehicle. And this is also what I really liked about that subreddit is they kept saying, don't feel obligated to play it a certain way. Play it the way you want. If you want to use mods your first time through, go ahead. If you want to do it, just one, path, do one region at a time, do it. If you want to bounce through regions when you're bored, do it. And it's just like, dude, that's a really nice way of getting a little bit of confrontation. There are some people where like, why are you asking me for it? Just play the game the way you want to play, dumb idiot. But sometimes, and I even have this too, is when I play a game, if I feel like I'm playing it wrong, I want to make sure that I'm playing it right. I'm not saying that I have to play it the exact same way as everyone else online, but if I am deviating, if I'm not doing something that the game actually wants me or I should do, and I'm making myself play the game and have a worse experience, I want to know so that I can course correct a little bit, right? So it was really nice to hear everyone just keep saying, no, play the game the way you want. If you want to use mods, don't feel guilty about using mods. And that's how I'm playing the game, and I'm having a blast with it. Like I said, it's my new go back to game. I've got to find a new phrase for that. Maybe I'll find that on the next podcast and I'll share it with you. So that is what is currently in my gaming library. And then the last segment that I just briefly want to talk about is the game of the month. This game of the month for April is Diablo. I've been playing it. In a few days, we're going to have a new game of the month. I'm not sure what that's going to be. I honestly don't know. I think I want to make it a retro game, an old school game. So I got to think about that. But that's going to do it for this podcast. It's been a little bit long, I know, because I've had a lot of stuff that I needed to get off my chest in audio form. So for me, I just want to say thank you very much for listening. If you want to catch my anything that I write, which is reviews and stuff, that's all on my website, gameordie.net. And I actually put out a video just last month. I was working on a VR video when I first moved out here to Tennessee in 2021. I was building my studio and I was working on a video for VR because I just wanted to talk about how rad VR really is, how awesome VR is. And so I was working on it and I got about 12-ish minutes into it. I did a lot of, stuff that I've wanted to talk about to people about VR, but in video form. And so I made that video and I was working on it, but then again, I was just traveling so much at that time. Like the project got stopped and started so many times. I went through a bunch of facial hair changes and weight gain and stuff like that. And I was just like, oh man, I don't know if I can put this out at this point. I have to kind of remake the whole video. I've kind of lost the thread on it. So my cousin Jeffrey Moore, man, Jeffrey is insane. I really admire Jeff. So my cousin Jeffrey Moore is a film producer. He has made a couple actual released films. One is called, I believe it's called You Ride. That was, I believe, his newest one. One is called, it was called You Ride. Now it's called Final Stop. And you can actually find it, I believe, on Amazon and a couple other streaming places. You can buy it as well. So check that out if you kind of like horror movies and stuff like that. But Jeff was talking to me a few months ago about AI and VR. And so I started talking to him. I'm like, dude, VR is rad. Like I had him come over to my house and play with the Oculus Quest, the Oculus Rift when I first had that, and he was blown away by it. And that was in its infancy still. So he got an Oculus Quest a couple years ago, and he plays it on and off, I believe. But he was talking to me about it. And I said, yeah, I did this video a couple years ago, but I never finished it. And so Jeff, because I admire him so much with how crazy his production is now, where he's making actual films and releasing them, he inspired me to at least release my work in progress version of my VR is awesome video. So you can go to the website, gameordie.net, and it's one of the first videos on there. I think I featured it. Just click on it, and it will take you to that YouTube video of me talking about why VR is so awesome. And I've put those reasons out there on this podcast so many times, but it's an actual visual representation of why I think VR is cool and also why I don't think it has caught on the way I feel like it should. You can also find it at Game or Die on YouTube. I think because they just started doing like naming like channels for YouTube. Like if you search Game or Die, I think you'll find it. But if you are having trouble finding my YouTube channel, I think it's Game or Die 007, because I'm always the Madman 007 online, and it's been that way for decades. So I just was like, dude, I don't know what to do, because there is other Game or Dies out there that don't really do anything. I am the only one that actually uses it. That's why I have gameordie.net, not gameordie.com, because there are other people that use that name, and that's fine. But if you have trouble finding the YouTube channel, go to gameordie.net, click on the link for the VR is awesome video, and it will take you to that video. And then you can just subscribe to that channel if you want to. I've done a couple other reviews. I did a review for Deathloop, the game that came out, I think, 2021, like late 2021, October of 2021. That was a really fun game. I really enjoyed that. I also did a review for Man-Eater, the shark game that came out a few years ago in 2020 as well. Man, dude, I want to make videos. Unfortunately, the time to make videos, because I travel, is just not there right now. Hopefully, I can do more online courses for my job to the point where I can stay home more often. And when that happens, you better believe I'm going to be doing a lot more streaming, a lot more video production again, because I enjoy it. I've always done video production since I was in high school. And I was in late 90s, early 2000s. Even before then, I was doing home videos and stuff of action figure movies and stuff. Same thing with my cousins. So I've been rambling on too much. I apologize, but I did want to point that out because I saw it right before I was getting ready and making notes for this podcast. I wanted to I saw that video and it's like, oh yeah, that's right. I did that VR video. It's a work in progress. It is not finished, but hopefully it will inspire me to kind of either remake the video or do a part 2 and just really do a good job and have high production value with that video, because I think VR really is awesome. There's so many amazing examples that people don't tell people about of why VR is awesome. But that's another topic for another time. I'll finalize this by saying again, thank you very much for listening to me ramble on. My name is Ryan Moore. I'm your host for the Game or Die podcast. Again, go to that webpage, gameordie.net, to view more stuff from me, or the YouTube channel, Game or Die 007, I believe. But yeah, maybe I'll have some links in this next episode. All right. Thank you very much for listening. I'll catch you next time.